In this video, I'm going to share with you the flow that I have been using in Power Automate to log in into SAP prior to running other report extraction scripts. Let us get started. First, let's recap how the SAP login process looks like. First, we open the application via the shortcut SAP Logon. Then, we will select the server that we will want to log into. Once selected, we will click Enter and we will see the login page. The next step is just to input our SAP username and password. Then click on the Enter button and we are ready to execute any report extraction script or flow that we have. With Power Automate, we can easily automate the logon process with just a single action block. Let us head straight right into Power Automate desktop. Click on Create a new flow and I will just name my flow SAP Logon. The action that we will use to log into SAP is the Run Application action. For the application path, we will be pointing at SAP shcut.exe. To get the path, click on Start, search for SAP Logon, and then click on Open File Location. This is a shortcut file, and since we need to look for where the shortcut is pointing to, right-click on it and click on Open File Location again. Once you are in the folder, search for SAP shcut. Once you see it, hold the Shift button and click with your right mouse button. Then click on Copy as Path. Return to Power Automate and use Ctrl+V to paste the file path into the field. Remove the two quotation marks at the beginning and the end of the path. For the command line argument, input the following based on your SAP System ID, Client ID, Username, and Password. To get your SAP System ID and Client ID, simply refer to the bottom right corner of the SAP Easy Access menu right after you log in. In my case, my SAP System ID is NPL and my Client ID is 001. For username and password, simply put in the ones that you have been using to log in into SAP. Let me input my parameters into the field. Click on Save. This is the only action we need to start SAP and log into it. Before concluding the flow, I will insert an if process block to check if SAP Logon is running prior to running the flow. If SAP Logon is found to be running, then I will choose to terminate the SAP Logon process. Else, I'll just proceed as usual. Let us try to test it out to see if this is working. Everything runs fine and we are logged into SAP. Now some of you may be wondering, isn't it very unsafe to store your SAP username and password as a string that might be visible to others? There may be different ways that you can get around it. For me, my way of handling sensitive text within Power Automate is via Azure Key Vault. Azure Key Vault is a service provided by Microsoft for securely storing and accessing secrets such as passwords. If you do not have an Azure account, you can sign up for a subscription using the link below. For new users, Microsoft Azure is providing 12 months of free services and $200 credit for you to explore Azure for 30 days. Once you have an Azure account, go to portal.azure.com and search for Key Vault service. Click on Create. Select your subscription and resource group. If you do not have any resource group, just create a new one using the Create New button. It is quite straightforward. Give your Key Vault a name, and in my case, I will use SAP User Pass. Click on Review plus Create. Once validation is done, click on Create. Now, wait for a few minutes until you get a notification that your Key Vault has been deployed. Once it is deployed, access the Key Vaults that you have just created. I will store two information here in the Key Vault. One for my SAP username and another for my SAP password. To do that, click on Secrets, then click on Generate. For the name, put in something identifiable for you. For me, I will put in SAP username as the name, and for the value, it will be developer, which is my SAP username. Click on create. Then I will click on the generate button again, and this time I will do the same thing for my SAP password. Once everything is done, we can now navigate to Power Automate Cloud. Before we start to create a flow, click on data, then connections. Search for Azure Key Vault and create a connection. For the vault name, put in the name that you have created in Azure. For my case, it will be SAP User Pass. Click on Create and log into your Azure account. Once it has been created, click on Refresh before navigating to the Create tab to create our new flow. Click on Instant Cloud Flow, select Manually Trigger a Flow, and create. Of course, you can have a different trigger, but in this case, I will just be using the Instant Cloud Flow for demonstration purposes. Let me give my flow a name here for identification. We will be using the Get Secret Steps here to retrieve our SAP username and password from Azure Key Vault. On the last step, we will run a flow built with Power Automate Desktop. Here, select the gateway that is available under your account. If you have yet to install an on-premise gateway in your PC, download the installer by clicking on the New Gateway button and install it. The installation should be quite straightforward. For the domain and username, you need to open Command Prompt in your PC. Click on the Windows logo and search for CMD. Once the command prompt is loaded, put in the command "Who am I?" What is returned is actually the domain and username that you need to input into the parameter. For the password, this is simply your Windows password that you use to log in. Click on Create. Wait for a few seconds and it is now connected. Before we proceed to the next step, we need to go back to Power Automate Desktop and create two input variables that we would like to push into the flow, which is SAP username and SAP password. Next, replace our SAP username and password in the command line arguments with the newly created input variables. Once everything is good, click on Save. Once the flow has been saved, go back to Power Automate Cloud and select the flow that you have built. You will see that the two input variables that we have added in Power Automate Desktop will appear at the bottom as parameters. I will rename the Get Secret step so that I can easily identify which value I should use for each of the input variables. Pass in the SAP username and password as the parameter. Oh, and one last step before we complete the flow. To make sure our information is secured, for every step in the flow, click on Settings and turn on Secure Inputs and Outputs to ensure all data going through the flow will be encrypted and secured. Now that we have set up our flow, let us try and test it out. As you can see, after the flow is being triggered in the cloud, it will run the flow in our PC and log into SAP. If we check the actions in the flow, you can see that the input and output for these actions were not shown, as we have turned on secure inputs and outputs. This way, your SAP username and password would be safe and secure. After you log into SAP, you can simply combine it with other SAP automation script. For more information on how to automate report extraction in SAP, check out the previous video that I have posted in the channel. I will include the link to the video in the description as well. If you find this video helpful for your journey with Power Automate, please smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. That is all from me. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in my future videos.
Bye bye.